Maya grew up in Nebraska, in a stretch of land where cornfields rolled endlessly toward the horizon, bending and swaying under the weight of summer winds. Her father's crop-dusting plane sat like a weathered sentinel at the edge of their property, its faded red paint chipped from decades of sun and wind. While other kids played baseball or chased after video games, Maya spent hours around that plane, inspecting every bolt, tracing the lines of its wings, and imagining the world from above. She wasn't just fascinated by flying. She felt at home there, as though the sky itself had chosen her. By the time she was 12, she had already learned to taxi the plane along the dirt strip behind their barn. She could take off and land under her father's careful supervision, feeling the subtle vibrations of the engine beneath her hands. Each morning, before the sun had fully risen, Maya would climb into the cockpit, the smell of oil and engine grease filling her senses. The air smelled different above the fields, fresher somehow, yet charged with energy, as if the world itself was awake and watching her. Sometimes she imagined the birds above, and it was not difficult to believe they were guiding her, riding the thermals alongside her as she maneuvered with a steady hand and a fearless heart. Neighbors called her the cornfield pilot, mostly as a joke. Children in the town would dare each other to wave at her as she zoomed past overhead. Farmers would pause to watch her perform loops over their land, eyebrows raised in disbelief. She didn't mind the nickname. If anything, it suited her in a quiet, stubborn way. She liked being underestimated. It gave her an edge, a secret thrill. Flying wasn't about recognition or fame. It was about control, instinct, and that unique sensation when the world below seemed small and insignificant, and the sky felt endless. Her father, a stoic man who had never been beyond the county line himself, watched her with a mixture of pride and anxiety. He'd spent his life in those same fields, dusting corn and soybeans for decades, never imagining his daughter would inherit his plane and his love for flight, but with a skill and instinct he could never match. He would give her advice, gentle but firm, about the importance of precision and timing, about respecting the plane as a living thing. And Maya listened, absorbing every word, not because she needed it, but because it grounded her in a world that often felt like it was rushing too fast. By 15, she was performing maneuvers that stunned even her father. She could weave between the tall stalks of corn from the air, judging distances with an almost supernatural sense of precision. She could execute tight turns, rolls, and dives with a balance that seemed impossible for someone so young. She began to understand the rhythms of the wind, the subtle differences in lift at different altitudes, and the nuanced behavior of an engine under pressure. Every flight became a lesson in observation, decision-making, and self-control. Where others saw cornfields, she saw a living classroom, every row a line of instruction written by nature itself. School was a secondary world to her. While her classmates worried about prom, sports, and social events, Maya measured time in takeoffs and landings, in hours spent under the sun or under a sky heavy with clouds. Homework often waited. Flying could not. She memorized aerodynamics textbooks like others memorized novels, her fingers tracing diagrams as though they were maps to another realm. Teachers initially struggled to understand her focus. She would sometimes disappear into the fields with a sketchpad or a notebook, jotting calculations about wind patterns, lift, and thrust. It was obsessive to some, visionary to others, but to Maya, it was the only thing that made sense. The local airport became her second home. It wasn't much, 2 hangars, a short dirt runway, a few small planes, but to Maya, it was a place of wonder. Mechanics who had worked there for decades began to notice her. They would offer her small tips, advice on maintenance and control surfaces, and she would absorb every word. Sometimes, older pilots would shake their heads at the thought of a teenage girl handling a plane that required steady hands and nerves of steel. But Maya handled it all with quiet confidence, never boastful, never reckless, only focused. Summer after summer, her skill grew. One year, during a particularly hot July, a sudden gust swept through the fields while she was performing a loop. The plane wobbled violently, the engine roaring under strain. Most adults would have frozen in panic, but Maya instinctively adjusted the flaps, banked sharply, and stabilized the plane mid-air, landing perfectly without a scratch. Witnesses, neighbors leaning over their fences, farmers pausing in their tractors, clapped and cheered, astonished. Her father's chest swelled with pride. She didn't seek applause. The thrill of mastering the challenge was its own reward. That day, she realized something. Her instincts were her greatest asset, and they were sharper than anyone around her could imagine. The isolation of her rural world was, in a sense, a gift. There were no distractions, no pressure to conform. The sky above the cornfields was hers alone. She began to dream not of county fairs or small-town glory, but of horizons far beyond Nebraska. The more she flew, the more she imagined the possibilities. Planes faster and more advanced, skies wider and more dangerous. Challenges she could scarcely comprehend, yet somehow longed for. The cornfields had given her discipline, control, and courage. Now, she wanted to see if the same instincts could carry her anywhere. One afternoon, while Maya was performing a daring low pass over a neighboring farm, a retired Air Guard colonel happened to be visiting family in the area. He watched silently from a distance as the plane dipped, rolled, and turned with unerring precision. He squinted against the sun, unable to believe his eyes. The control, the timing, the courage, it was the same precision he had seen in combat pilots decades younger than himself. After the flight, he approached her family, voice low but urgent. "Does she know how good she is?" He asked her father. Because she could fly almost anywhere, if she wanted to. That night, the words lingered in Maya's mind. She thought of the endless cornfields, of engines humming in the morning light, of every precise maneuver she had perfected over years of solitude. Could she really fly beyond Nebraska? Could the instincts honed over fields of corn translate into real combat, real machines, real danger? Doubts crept in, but so did excitement. For the first time, Maya considered the idea that her life could be bigger than she had ever imagined, that the horizon was not a limit, but an invitation. As she lay in bed, listening to the wind sweep across the farm, she imagined herself in planes she had only read about: sleek, deadly, complex, and fast. The thrill of mastery, of challenge, coursed through her veins. The cornfields had taught her patience, discipline, and observation, but the sky beyond promised something more: recognition, challenge, and perhaps even glory. For Maya, the first step had always been courage. And courage, she now understood, would take her far beyond the familiar fields she had always called home. By the time the sun rose again, painting the sky in pinks and golds, Maya had made a decision. She would test herself. She would answer the question that had haunted her for years. Could the girl who had conquered cornfields also conquer the skies of the United States? She didn't know what awaited her. She only knew she had to try. The horizon was calling, and for the first time, she was ready to fly toward it without fear. Maya could barely contain her excitement when the Air Force acceptance letter arrived. It was an envelope that seemed too big for her hands, crisp and official, bearing the seal of a world she had only dreamed of. Her father's hands trembled as he helped her open it. "Looks like you're going somewhere," he said, a mixture of pride and disbelief in his voice. Maya's mother, who had always been quieter, hugged her tight. "Make them see what we see," she whispered. The words settled into Maya's chest like armor, fortifying her for what lay ahead. The first weeks of basic training were unlike anything she had ever imagined. The dormitory smelled of sweat and anticipation, and the drill sergeants' voices boomed like thunderstorms over a flat horizon. Maya's classmates came from every corner of the country, kids from military academies, sons and daughters of career officers, athletes who had been groomed for this path their entire lives. She was the girl from nowhere, Nebraska, with calloused hands and dirt under her nails, walking into a world that measured worth in grades, physical feats, and inherited prestige. Her small-town accent immediately drew attention. Some classmates sneered, whispering jokes about the cornfield pilot who thought she belonged in the Air Force. Others barely noticed. Maya didn't argue. She had learned early that words were distractions. Action spoke louder than insults. In the flight simulators, she focused, calibrating her instincts and reflexes with surgical precision. Machines responded to her touch, as if they recognized the quiet authority in her hands. She didn't just fly. She adapted, analyzed, and executed maneuvers with an uncanny calm. The early days were exhausting. Pre-dawn physical training left muscles trembling, and sleep was scarce. Classroom lessons on aerodynamics, navigation, and jet mechanics felt overwhelming at first, a cascade of information that threatened to drown her confidence. But Maya was used to mastering complex patterns. Cornrows had trained her eyes, her brain, her instincts. Slowly, the textbooks became allies rather than obstacles. She began memorizing flight charts and system schematics with the same dedication she had once reserved for crop-dusting maneuvers. Knowledge was power, and Maya intended to wield it in every cockpit she entered. Simulators became her sanctuary. Here, she could test herself without risk, and every failure was an opportunity to refine her instincts. One day, during a simulated dogfight against seasoned cadets, Maya executed a split-S maneuver, diving at a velocity no one else had attempted. The instructors gasped. How did she even? One whispered. Maya felt a surge of quiet triumph, but didn't smile. She didn't need praise. The machines themselves were her judge, and today they had approved her. Word began to spread. The cornfield pilot was no longer a joke. She was something different, something formidable. Yet respect was slow to arrive. During meals in downtown, whispers followed her. Some classmates doubted her ability to handle the strain of real aircraft. Others mocked her rural background, assuming she lacked the sophistication or discipline of academy-trained peers. The first time a classmate said outright, "You're just a crop duster," Maya smiled faintly, recalling the wide Nebraska sky and the endless hours she had spent mastering flight in conditions far tougher than any simulator could replicate. She didn't respond verbally. Her answers came in the cockpit, where instincts mattered more than words. The turning point came during the first live flight exercises. Maya's hands were steady on the throttle, eyes scanning instruments and horizon alike. Her plane responded precisely to her inputs, cutting through turbulence with a grace that seemed effortless. She outperformed cadets who had been hailed as natural prodigies, hitting every mark on the course, anticipating every gust of wind, every curve of the air currents. Instructors began to take notice, scribbling notes and murmuring during debriefings. "She's uncheckable," one commented quietly, almost to himself. "Someone tell me where she learned to fly like this." Even outside the cockpit, Maya's presence was growing. She became a quiet anchor during group exercises, offering calm guidance when simulations went awry. When others faltered under stress, she held steady, observing, calculating, and directing action with clarity born of years above Nebraska cornfields. Her classmates could not ignore her anymore. The girl they had mocked was now setting the pace, showing that courage, skill, and instinct often outweighed pedigree and tradition. Slowly, grudging respect began to replace their derision. though it was still measured, cautious, and sometimes hidden behind competitive glares. One night, after a long day of exercises, Maya found herself on the roof of the dormitory, staring at a sky she had long considered her domain. The stars were the same as those over her family farm, yet now they felt different, larger, more distant, almost daring her to reach them. She remembered every early morning takeoff, every loop, every landing that had felt too dangerous, too perfect. She understood now that Nebraska had been her training ground, that her childhood had given her more than just skill. It had given her resilience, patience, and fearlessness. But the Air Force world was unforgiving. Every success came with pressure to maintain it, every mistake magnified tenfold. Maya struggled with this reality. One exercise, a mid-flight miscalculation, nearly sent her spinning into a simulated stall. Her stomach dropped as alarms blared. Instinct took over. She corrected, stabilized, and landed without incident, but the adrenaline left her shaking for hours. Instructors praised her recovery, yet the experience reminded her how high the stakes were now. The sky was no longer a playground. It was a proving ground where hesitation could be fatal. As weeks turned into months, Maya adapted. She began to anticipate scenarios in simulators before they unfolded, her instincts sharpening to a razor's edge. Instructors marveled at her ability to think 3 moves ahead, a skill they attributed to natural talent and mental acuity honed over years of solitary flying. Maya herself felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her hard work and experience had forged an edge no textbook could teach. Her classmates, once dismissive, now watched her with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The cornfield pilot was transforming into something much more formidable. Perhaps the most significant moment came during a mock dogfight exercise. Her instructor, a veteran pilot with decades of experience, expected her to falter under pressure. Instead, Maya executed a series of maneuvers so precise and unpredictable that he lost his target lock. How did she see that coming? He muttered to his colleagues, bewildered. It was more than skill. It was intuition, the culmination of countless hours reading air currents, assessing distances, and trusting instinct. That single exercise earned her her first real respect in the program. From that day on, her call sign, though not yet formalized, felt inevitable. Viper. Even as she excelled, Maya remained humble. She did not gloat over victories or belittle those who struggled. She understood the importance of teamwork, of trusting her wingmen, and of learning from every failure. Her small-town upbringing, with its long hours of solitary work and quiet observation, had instilled in her a discipline and patience few others possessed. This balance of confidence and humility became her hallmark. She wasn't just talented. She was dependable, resilient, and unshakable. By the end of her first year of training, Maya had proven herself beyond any doubt. She could fly with precision, strategize with intelligence, and respond to crises with calm determination. Her instructors, once skeptical, now cited her as an example to newer cadets. Even classmates who had mocked her began to ask questions, seeking guidance and advice. Maya's transformation was complete. The girl who had grown up among cornfields had become a pilot of extraordinary skill, ready to face challenges far beyond anything she had ever encountered in her quiet hometown. Yet, for Maya, the journey had only just begun. She understood that being part of the Air Force meant more than excelling in exercises or impressing instructors. It meant adapting to faster, more advanced aircraft, to missions that carried real stakes, and to a world where one mistake could mean disaster. The F-35 awaited, a challenge that even seasoned pilots approached with caution. And somewhere deep inside, Maya felt the thrill of that challenge calling to her. The cornfields had taught her to fly, but the world beyond was waiting to test the pilot she had become. The next phase of training tested Maya like never before. She had excelled in simulators, in classroom drills, and even in basic live flight exercises. But now the Air Force demanded perfection under pressure. Every pilot was under constant scrutiny, every maneuver logged and evaluated, and mistakes were costly. Maya felt the weight of expectation pressing down, heavier than any crop-dusting plane or Nebraska summer storm she had ever endured. She was no longer flying for fun or instinct alone. Here, her skill would be measured against the most advanced pilots in the country, and she knew that only her precision and discipline would keep her ahead. Her classmates, initially dismissive of her rural background, were beginning to realize that Maya was different. Her small-town upbringing had trained her in ways they could not comprehend: patience, observation, and unwavering focus under stress. While others relied on theory alone, she could feel the rhythm of the sky, sense turbulence before instruments warned of it, and anticipate problems in real time. It was instinct honed over years of solitary flights across endless cornfields. This advantage became obvious during the first series of competitive exercises, where she outmaneuvered academy-trained pilots with calm precision, earning both admiration and a touch of envy. But not everyone was impressed. Some cadets mocked her quietly, questioning whether she could handle the intense schedules and high-tech machinery that would soon define her career. A senior trainee named Jensen, known for his cocky attitude and natural athleticism, was particularly vocal. "You're good at loops and low passes," he sneered during one debriefing. "But can you survive in real combat scenarios?" "I doubt it." Maya smiled politely, her mind already calculating angles, wind vectors, and throttle adjustments she could make in the next exercise. Words were cheap. Results were everything. The Air Force demanded more than skill. It demanded mental endurance. Hours of instruction on flight theory, navigation, and tactical combat blurred together with early morning drills and nighttime exercises. Sleep was a luxury. Meals were often rushed, and the stress of constant evaluation gnawed at the edges of every cadet's confidence. Maya felt fatigue settling in her muscles and mind, but she pushed forward. She had survived long hours above fields, enduring heat, cold, and storms with only her instincts to guide her. Now, she applied the same mental rigor to every cockpit challenge. It was during a particularly grueling series of formation flights that Maya first began to see her reputation take shape. Pilots were paired for exercises that required split-second timing and absolute coordination. One miscalculation could mean collision or failure. Maya flew alongside classmates who had years of experience, matching them turn for turn, predicting their movements as if she had known them for years. Instructors noted her ability to remain calm under chaos, her capacity to correct mistakes mid-flight, and her uncanny knack for maintaining control even when other pilots panicked. Her rising skill did not go unnoticed. One evening, after a long day of maneuvers, her instructor, Major Reynolds, pulled her aside. He was a veteran pilot, with decades of combat experience etched into the lines of his face. "You have talent, Maya," he said quietly. "But talent isn't enough. Precision, timing, anticipation, those are what separate good pilots from great ones. Keep pushing. Don't let anything distract you, especially pride or nerves." Maya nodded, understanding the weight behind his words. She had always known her limits were far beyond the cornfields, but she now realized that the Air Force would push her even further. Rivalries emerged naturally. Cadets competed fiercely, often testing each other in both simulated and real exercises. Jensen, in particular, became a persistent obstacle, constantly trying to undermine her confidence. He mocked her, questioned her decisions, and even attempted to bait her into mistakes during formation exercises. Maya quickly learned that she couldn't react emotionally. Instead, she studied his tendencies, anticipated his moves, and countered silently in the air. Every victory was quiet, internal, and deeply satisfying. She didn't need to prove herself with words. Her flying did that. The first real taste of high-stress combat simulation cemented her status. In a mock dogfight against multiple opponents, Maya found herself outnumbered. Alarms blared in the cockpit, instruments flashed red, and every pilot around her seemed to make minor errors under pressure. She dove, rolled, and banked with flawless timing, reading the positions of her enemy aircraft with instinctive precision. Within minutes, she had locked on targets, executed perfect maneuvers, and neutralized threats that seemed impossible to manage simultaneously. The debriefing room fell silent before one instructor muttered, "She's not just good. She's exceptional." Despite her growing competence, Maya felt the pressure keenly. Every success raised expectations, and every challenge was magnified by the Air Force's exacting standards. There were nights when she lay awake, replaying maneuvers in her mind, wondering if she had misjudged angles or timing. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by imagined errors and worst-case scenarios. But each morning, she returned to the airstrip, determined to excel. The lessons of Nebraska had taught her that persistence and preparation were as important as raw talent. She applied that same discipline to every cockpit session, every simulation, every evaluation. Her relationship with instructors evolved as well. Major Reynolds, initially a distant observer, began to mentor her personally. He provided feedback on strategy, risk assessment, and situational awareness, helping her understand the nuances of high-performance flight that went beyond instinct. "You think like a pilot who survived everything life threw at her," he said once after a particularly challenging exercise. "That's your edge. Don't lose it trying to imitate anyone else." Maya absorbed these lessons quietly, integrating them seamlessly with the instincts honed over years in the sky above her family farm. The psychological challenges were as demanding as the physical ones. Stress simulations, sudden maneuvers, and split-second decision-making exercises were designed to test mental fortitude. Maya discovered that her greatest asset was her ability to detach emotionally from panic, to observe and act with clarity when others were clouded by fear. Where other cadets reacted impulsively, she analyzed and executed. Where others froze under unexpected conditions, she adapted. Slowly, her classmates stopped mocking her, though many still held back true respect. Her presence was now acknowledged with cautious admiration, tinged with wariness, as they realized she was not just competent, she was formidable. Even outside the cockpit, Maya's reputation grew. During downtime and meals, cadets would watch her calmly study manuals, review flight charts, and take notes on tactical strategies. She didn't boast or seek attention, but her diligence was impossible to ignore. The same traits that had earned her skill in the field's focus, persistence, humility, and quiet confidence, now defined her presence among the elite. Slowly, peers who had doubted her began seeking her advice, albeit reluctantly. She didn't mind. Leadership wasn't about winning arguments. It was about inspiring trust through action. One memorable exercise involved a night flight scenario with extremely limited visibility. Cadets had to navigate, track, and engage targets using only instrument readings and coordination with their wingmen. Many faltered. Maya felt the plane shiver under sudden shifts in air pressure and turbulence, yet she remained calm. Her hands were steady, eyes sharp, mind calculating multiple variables simultaneously. She led her formation flawlessly, achieving mission objectives that even seasoned cadets struggled to meet. As the exercise ended, Major Reynolds nodded silently, pride and approval evident in his eyes. This was no longer a farm girl learning to fly. This was a pilot who commanded respect. By the end of her third year of intense training, Maya had become a force in the Air Force's training program. Her call sign, though informal at first, was quietly circulating. Viper. It was a name whispered with a mixture of admiration and awe. referencing her speed, precision, and unyielding focus. The girl who had once flown alone above Nebraska cornfields had carved a place among the most capable pilots in the program. She was no longer underestimated, and for the first time, she felt ready for the challenges that lay ahead. The advanced jets, the simulated combat scenarios, and eventually, the skies beyond training. And yet, for all her successes, Maya remained grounded in her origins. She never forgot the long hours spent alone in a small cockpit, the wind rustling through endless stalks of corn, or the lessons her father had taught her about patience, control, and courage. Those fields, those early flights, had shaped her into the pilot she had become. Now, standing on the precipice of the F-35 program, she felt the thrill of anticipation. The cornfields had given her her start, but the sky beyond was calling, and Maya was ready to answer. Maya's reputation had begun to ripple through the program, but the ultimate test of her skill was approaching: advanced fighter training. The Air Force's elite pilots had warned her that this next phase would push every boundary physical, mental, and emotional. The F-35, with its stealth technology, supersonic capabilities, and intricate systems, awaited her. It wasn't just about flying anymore. It was about commanding a machine that had the potential to outperform everything she had ever experienced. The first time she stepped into the cockpit of a real F-35, Maya felt a mixture of exhilaration and awe, her heartbeat syncing with the pulse of the engines. The cockpit was a maze of screens, buttons, and tactile controls, each one capable of altering the aircraft's behavior in subtle, complex ways. She ran her hands over the console, memorizing every dial, every sensor, every switch. The instructors watched silently as she familiarized herself with the controls. This was a test of instinct and intellect. Maya knew that mastering the plane would require all her skills: precision from crop dusting, calm from simulator drills, and patience honed over years of solitary flight. Nothing could replace instinct when the pressure was real, and instinct had always been her greatest ally. Her first flight in the F-35 was daunting. The engines roared like a caged beast, thrusting her into the sky with a force she had never felt before. Instruments flickered, the canopy vibrated, and every control input demanded accuracy and timing. For a moment, she felt the familiar anxiety that came with the unknown. But then, instinct took over. Maya remembered the cornfields, the loops, the dives, the countless hours alone with the wind and engine beneath her. She adjusted subtly, feeling the plane respond as though it recognized her authority. Her hands moved with confidence, and her mind calculated trajectories instinctively. The flight was a dance of technology and human skill. Maya performed maneuvers that would have daunted even seasoned veterans. Turns, rolls, climbs, and dives flowed seamlessly as she integrated systems readings with instinctive judgments. The instructors were astonished. One muttered, "She's not just learning, she's interpreting the plane as if it's an extension of her body." Hours passed in what felt like moments, and when Maya finally returned to base, her face was flushed, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She had survived and mastered the first taste of supersonic power. It was during a tactical dogfight simulation that her call sign emerged. Her instructor, Lieutenant Colonel Harris, a veteran of decades of flight, had arranged a particularly challenging scenario. Maya was paired against multiple aggressor jets, each piloted by elite cadets who had years of experience with advanced fighters. The initial maneuvers were tense. Jets weaved and banked in high-speed sequences, tracking each other with precision, each pilot calculating angles, velocity, and distance with split-second accuracy. Maya felt the familiar rhythm of flight, a sense of control that belied the chaos surrounding her. Her opponents attempted to outmaneuver her repeatedly, cutting angles and using aggressive tactics to force her into mistakes. Maya countered instinctively, diving, rolling and banking in ways that were calculated yet unpredictable. Each move was deliberate, precise, and fluid, leaving the aggressors scrambling to adapt. At one point, she threaded her plane between two opponents, a move that had been considered too risky by many veterans. She locked onto her target, executed a perfect simulated strike, and emerged unscathed. The instructor's eyes widened. Even the elite pilots struggled to comprehend how a young cadet could outmaneuver such skillful adversaries. When she finally landed, the debriefing was silent at first. Then, one instructor spoke, voice hushed with awe. "She moves like a viper." Fast, precise, lethal. The nickname caught fire immediately. It was more than a compliment. It was a statement. Maya was no longer the farm girl from Nebraska. She was a force to be reckoned with. The name Viper circulated quietly at first, then boldly. Every time a new cadet asked about the girl who had outperformed elite pilots, the response came with a mixture of respect and awe. "That's Viper." Even as the call sign spread, Maya remained focused. She didn't let fame distract her from the work. Each day in the F-35 brought new challenges: simulated combat under extreme conditions, complex navigation missions, emergency drills, and tactical maneuvers designed to push pilots to their limits. Mistakes were not tolerated. Hesitation was punished. Yet Maya thrived. Where others felt overwhelmed, she felt clarity. Every system, every instrument, every maneuver was a puzzle she could solve with the combination of instinct and calculation she had honed since childhood. Her classmates, some now allies, some still rivals, watched closely. Jensen, who had once mocked her, could not conceal his respect. "You're untouchable in that thing," he admitted one evening after a long exercise. Maya smiled faintly, but inside she felt a quiet determination. Respect could be fleeting in the Air Force, and every flight required proving herself anew. She had learned early that instinct alone wasn't enough. Preparation, knowledge, and composure were equally vital. Each simulation became a proving ground, and each victory a testament to the fusion of her rural upbringing and elite training. During one-night exercise, the true scale of her skill became evident. Flying under near-total darkness, Maya relied on instruments and spatial awareness alone. Enemy aircraft were simulated to be invisible to radar, forcing pilots to rely on timing, intuition, and split-second judgment. Many cadets struggled, disoriented by the lack of visual cues. Maya, however, moved with the calm precision of someone who had navigated storms and variable wind patterns for years. She led her formation flawlessly, anticipating threats before they became visible, executing maneuvers that kept her and her team safe. By the end, even her instructors admitted that her instinctive responses were exceptional. Outside the cockpit, Maya's demeanor reflected her growing confidence. She was no longer intimidated by her elite peers, nor did she flaunt her accomplishments. She offered guidance quietly, observing and supporting rather than dominating conversation. Fellow cadets began seeking her advice, though often tentatively, acknowledging the combination of skill, intelligence, and instinct that set her apart. Leadership, she realized, wasn't about authority or intimidation. It was about trust, action, and reliability. Her presence became a stabilizing factor for others, a demonstration of how competence and humility could coexist even under extreme pressure. Despite her rapid ascent, Maya remained grounded in her origins. She remembered the hours spent over cornfields, feeling the wind against her skin and adjusting for turbulence with nothing but instinct and experience. Those long, solitary flights had taught her discipline, patience, and fearlessness lessons that no classroom or simulator could replicate. The F-35, with all its speed and sophistication, demanded more of her, but the foundation of skill and confidence built in Nebraska carried her through every challenge. She realized that the cornfields were not merely her past. They were the crucible that forged her resilience and her edge. By the end of this phase of training, Maya had earned her place among the elite. Her call sign, Viper, was no longer whispered. It was recognized and respected. Instructors, classmates, and even visiting officers referred to her with the reverence reserved for those who consistently exceeded expectations. She had transformed from a local curiosity into a pilot capable of outmaneuvering the most talented cadets in the Air Force. Every challenge she faced reinforced her confidence, yet also reminded her that the sky held even greater tests. The most important lesson Maya learned during this period was that skill alone was insufficient. The F-35 demanded integration of intellect, instinct, and mental resilience. It required the ability to remain calm under extreme stress, to trust one's judgment when seconds mattered, and to lead under conditions that could easily overwhelm others. Maya had discovered that her instincts, developed over years of solitary flight, were her greatest advantage, but only when combined with preparation, knowledge, and unwavering focus. And so, Maya stood on the precipice of her next great challenge. The call sign Viper had become more than a nickname. It was a symbol of her skill, her perseverance, and her readiness to face the skies beyond training. The cornfields had given her a foundation. Air Force training had honed her abilities, and now the real world of advanced aerial combat beckoned. With a mixture of excitement and determination, she knew that every flight ahead would test her limits, but she was ready. The sky had claimed her as one of its own. By the time Maya completed her initial F-35 training, she had already become a pilot whose instincts were as sharp as her technical knowledge. The sleek fighter jet responded to her like an extension of her body, and every instrument was as familiar as the cornfields of Nebraska that had shaped her early life. Yet despite her mastery, Maya knew that the next challenge would test her limits in ways no solo flight or simulator could. Red Flag, the Air Force's most grueling combat training exercise, loomed on the horizon, demanding skill, strategy, and nerve under the most extreme conditions. Red Flag was legendary a crucible where the best pilots from around the country, and sometimes allied nations, were pitted against one another in highly realistic combat scenarios. The training area spanned hundreds of miles of desert airspace, complete with mock enemy installations, advanced aerial threats, and high-stress multi-aircraft coordination exercises. Even seasoned pilots approached it with caution. Failure could be humiliating, dangerous, or both. Maya felt a thrill she had not known before. This was no simulation. It was real training at the edge of human and technological limits. She welcomed it. Her preparations began months in advance. Every evening, after exhausting daytime exercises, Maya pored over mission plans, threat assessments, and simulated engagement strategies. She memorized flight paths, radar blind spots, and potential escape maneuvers, studying each scenario with meticulous care. Other cadets often underestimated the preparation required, relying too heavily on instinct alone. Maya knew that instinct was invaluable, but it could only take her so far without deep knowledge of her machine, her environment, and her opponents. She spent long hours mapping contingencies, running simulations in her mind, and practicing emergency procedures until they became second nature. The physical demands were relentless as well. Red Flag involved extended flight hours under extreme conditions, often with little rest between sorties. Maya's body was pushed to its limits, muscles burning, reaction times tested, and stamina strained. Yet she had been forged for endurance, accustomed to long hours in small cockpits, navigating unpredictable weather over Nebraska farmland. Her body, conditioned through years of solitary flight, responded naturally. She could endure physical strain longer than most cadets, and fatigue never dulled the precision of her reflexes. This endurance became a secret weapon, allowing her to sustain focus even when others faltered. The first day of Red Flag was a trial by fire. Maya's squadron was briefed for a large-scale mock engagement. Enemy aircraft were to simulate an ambush, and every pilot's reaction could determine success or failure. Communication channels crackled with tension, commanders giving instructions in rapid-fire cadence. Maya's hands moved over controls with a practiced rhythm, eyes scanning instruments and horizon simultaneously. She coordinated with her wingmen, anticipating their movements while tracking the simulated threats. The precision of her actions reflected a combination of instinct, training, and mental clarity that few cadets could match. The simulated engagement was brutal. Enemy jets closed in from multiple angles, employing tactics designed to confuse and overwhelm. Many pilots panicked, making mistakes that could have been fatal in a real scenario. Maya, however, remained calm, her instincts guiding her maneuvers. She banked sharply, executed evasive rolls, and positioned herself advantageously to strike back. Every action was calculated, precise, and timely. By the end of the first exercise, she had neutralized 2 enemy aircraft while avoiding detection, a feat that stunned both instructors and fellow cadets. Her performance set a new benchmark for excellence. Word of her skill spread rapidly among the Red Flag participants. Veterans whispered her name, Viper. They had heard rumors, but witnessing her in action made it real. Her peers began to recognize that she was not just talented. She was exceptional. The combination of instinct, preparation, and mental resilience allowed her to outmaneuver opponents who had years of experience over her. Even seasoned pilots found themselves second-guessing their strategies when flying against her. Maya's presence shifted the dynamic of the exercise, forcing everyone to account for her precision and composure. Despite her success, Maya remained vigilant. Every sortie revealed new challenges: sudden simulated system failures, coordinated enemy attacks, and unpredictable environmental factors. She treated each mission as a learning opportunity, analyzing her performance afterward with meticulous care. Debriefings were intense, instructors questioning every decision, every maneuver, every angle. Maya welcomed the scrutiny, knowing that mastery required both self-awareness and a willingness to confront mistakes. Her competitors, some of whom had previously dismissed her, began to adopt a new attitude: respect, tempered with determination to match her skill. One particularly intense exercise pushed Maya to her limits. Her squadron was tasked with penetrating a heavily defended mock enemy airspace. Radar tracking, simulated missile locks, and electronic countermeasures created a labyrinth of hazards. Most pilots hesitated, trying to follow prescribed flight paths and strategies. Maya relied on instinct tempered by preparation. She maneuvered her F-35 through the simulated threats, anticipating enemy actions before they unfolded. When one wingman faltered, she adapted, covering the gap and ensuring mission objectives were met. By the end, her squadron had completed the exercise with unprecedented efficiency. Her instructors called it a flawless execution under extreme pressure. Beyond technical skill, Red Flag tested leadership. Cadets were expected to coordinate complex operations, making split-second decisions that affected the outcomes of entire missions. Maya excelled in this arena as well. She communicated clearly and efficiently, anticipating both threats and opportunities for her team. Fellow pilots began to look to her for guidance, even when she was officially a peer rather than a commander. She demonstrated that leadership was not about authority. It was about clarity, reliability, and the ability to make decisive decisions under stress. Her quiet confidence became an anchor for others. The psychological toll was immense. Long hours in the F-35, extreme G-forces, and the constant pressure of tactical simulations tested even the most resilient pilots. Maya experienced fatigue, stress, and moments of doubt yet she never wavered. She had learned from years above the cornfields that endurance was as much mental as physical. By compartmentalizing fear, maintaining focus, and trusting her training, she turned pressure into performance. The sky demanded courage, and Maya had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act decisively in its presence. By the conclusion of Red Flag, Maya's transformation was undeniable. She had earned her reputation as a pilot whose instincts and skills rivaled even the most experienced cadets and veterans. Viper was no longer a call sign whispered with skepticism. It was a symbol of excellence, precision, and composure under pressure. Instructors lauded her ability to integrate strategy, execution, and leadership seamlessly, while peers accepted her as a force that could not be ignored. Her performance had not only proven her capabilities, it had reshaped perceptions of what a pilot from a small town could achieve. Red Flag also solidified her sense of purpose. Maya understood that her journey was no longer about proving herself to doubters. It was about pushing the limits of what she could accomplish. Every maneuver, every mission, and every flight became an opportunity to refine her abilities, test her instincts, and prepare for challenges that extended beyond training exercises. The skills she had honed over years of crop dusting, simulator practice, and Air Force training had converged, creating a pilot whose combination of instinct, preparation, and courage was unmatched. Returning from the final exercise, Maya felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had survived the crucible of Red Flag, performed beyond expectation, and earned the respect of instructors and peers alike. Yet she remained grounded. The sky still held challenges, and the Air Force still demanded mastery of machines, strategies, and instincts beyond imagination. Maya's journey was far from over. But in that moment, she knew that the foundation she had built, from cornfields to simulators to the F-35 cockpit, had prepared her for any sky, any threat, any mission. She had truly become Viper. The desert sun blazed over the Nevada ranges as Maya prepared for the first live combat simulation of Red Flag. This was the pinnacle of her training, not just maneuvers, but full-scale air combat exercises against some of the Air Force's most seasoned pilots. Her F-35 gleamed under the sun, a precision instrument in her hands, ready to respond to every subtle movement, every decision, every instinct. The stakes were higher than ever. Mistakes were costly, and reputations could be shattered in seconds. Yet Maya felt a surge of anticipation rather than fear. This was what she had trained for. Squadron leaders briefed the pilots with military precision. Enemy aircraft, advanced aggressor jets flown by veterans, would attempt coordinated strikes on a mock installation. Maya's squadron was tasked with intercepting and neutralizing them while maintaining strict formation, minimizing exposure, and coordinating attacks. Every pilot had memorized the plan, but the real test would be execution under unpredictable high-pressure conditions. Maya ran through mental simulations in seconds, visualizing every scenario, accounting for each variable. Wind currents, radar detection, angles of attack, possible evasive maneuvers, and the capabilities of her own jet. The first engagement began abruptly. Communications crackled with tension as enemy aircraft executed a complex flanking maneuver. Maya's instincts kicked in immediately. She banked sharply, scanning for openings, her F-35 responding fluidly to her touch. One aggressor darted past her wing, attempting to simulate a missile lock. She adjusted, countered, and positioned herself strategically to strike back while remaining unseen. The coordination between her and her wingman was flawless. They moved as a single unit, a cohesive strike force, anticipating each other's moves while countering the enemy's. It was a ballet of speed, precision, and calculation. Enemy pilots were formidable, aggressive, and unpredictable. Many had decades of experience, and their tactics reflected that expertise. Maya quickly realized that instinct alone would not suffice. She had to integrate her training, her knowledge of the aircraft, and her mental acuity into every decision. When a second aggressor attempted a surprise flank, Maya executed a rapid barrel roll combined with a sharp descent, bringing her behind the target while maintaining situational awareness. Seconds later, she signaled her wingman for coordinated engagement. The strike was successful, the enemy neutralized, and the instructors monitoring from the control room were silent in awe. As the exercise escalated, Maya faced increasingly complex scenarios: simulated missile locks, electronic countermeasures, and multiple targets closing simultaneously. Many cadets became overwhelmed, making minor mistakes that cascaded into mission failures. Maya remained focused, methodically executing maneuvers, anticipating every move, and maintaining coordination with her team. Her eyes flicked between instruments, horizon, and enemy positions with fluid precision. Every decision was calculated yet instinctive, a fusion of years of solitary flight in Nebraska and elite Air Force training. In the cockpit, she was untouchable. Her wingmen began to rely on her implicitly. Cadets who had once questioned her abilities now watched her for cues, adapting to her timing and anticipating her decisions. Leadership in combat, Maya realized, was not about authority or rank. It was about reliability, precision, and the ability to remain calm when chaos threatened to unravel everything. She guided her team through ambushes, tactical traps, and simulated radar interference with clarity and confidence. By the end of the first day, her squadron's performance had far exceeded expectations. Maya's presence had transformed the operation from a routine exercise into a demonstration of expert strategy and execution. One particularly harrowing engagement tested every ounce of her skill. Enemy aircraft executed a coordinated pincer movement, attempting to isolate her squadron and force them into vulnerable positions. Cadets panicked under the complexity, breaking formation and exposing themselves to simulated attacks. Maya assessed the situation instantly, calculating angles, velocities, and response options in milliseconds. She maneuvered her F-35 through the incoming threats, guiding her squadron through a series of evasive and offensive maneuvers. Her wingmen followed her lead without hesitation. By the time the exercise concluded, Maya had neutralized multiple enemy aircraft and ensured the safety of her team. The debriefing room erupted in astonishment. Her instructors were unanimous in their assessment. Maya was exceptional. Major Reynolds, who had mentored her since early training, reviewed the flight data with a rare mixture of pride and disbelief. "You anticipated actions before they happened," he said. "You led your team flawlessly, under conditions that would overwhelm even seasoned pilots. That instinct, combined with preparation, is why you've earned every ounce of your reputation." For Maya, the praise was gratifying but secondary. The real reward was knowing she had performed flawlessly under extreme pressure and had kept her team safe. Maya's reputation as Viper solidified after the first week of live combat simulations. Veterans in the program whispered the name, a mixture of respect and awe. She was no longer just a promising cadet. She was a pilot who could be trusted with the most challenging and dangerous missions. Her combination of instinct, skill, and composure had earned her the trust of instructors and peers alike. Even Jensen, once a vocal critic, approached her cautiously, acknowledging in private the respect he now felt. Maya's presence had shifted the dynamics of the entire training exercise. The psychological intensity of the simulations was relentless. Long hours in the cockpit, extreme G-forces, and the constant need for split-second decisions tested both body and mind. Maya experienced moments of fatigue, stress, and doubt, but she had learned to compartmentalize fear and focus on execution. Her mental discipline, honed through years of solitary flight and high-pressure Air Force training, allowed her to maintain clarity and effectiveness even under extreme conditions. While others faltered, Maya thrived, demonstrating that resilience, preparation, and instinct were inseparable components of success in high-stakes aviation. Beyond technical mastery, Maya's performance demonstrated strategic insight. She began to anticipate enemy patterns, recognizing subtle cues in maneuvers and tactics that others overlooked. She adapted on the fly, adjusting strategies mid-engagement while maintaining team cohesion. Her instincts had always been sharp, but now they were integrated with high-level tactical awareness. This combination made her a formidable force, able to outmaneuver pilots with years of experience and command respect in a matter of seconds. Her presence altered the approach of opposing pilots, who had to account for her in every tactical calculation. One late-night sortie encapsulated the depth of Maya's transformation. The simulation involved a complex series of stealth and evasive maneuvers, with multiple enemy aircraft attempting coordinated attacks. Visibility was limited, and electronic countermeasures disrupted standard instrumentation. Most pilots struggled to adapt, but Maya relied on instinct, spatial awareness, and precise knowledge of her aircraft's capabilities. She guided her squadron through the engagement flawlessly, neutralizing simulated threats while minimizing exposure. By the time they landed, instructors and fellow pilots alike were visibly shaken by the level of skill she had displayed. By the end of Red Flag, Maya had not only survived the most rigorous combat simulation the Air Force offered, she had dominated it. Viper was no longer a nickname earned in jest. It was a symbol of excellence, precision, and calm under pressure. Her performance had earned the respect of instructors, veterans, and peers alike, establishing her as a pilot capable of facing any challenge. The girl who had once flown alone above Nebraska cornfields had become a legend in the eyes of her contemporaries, proving that skill, instinct, and resilience could overcome any doubt. Returning to base after the final exercise, Maya felt a sense of quiet triumph. She had faced the most skilled pilots in the Air Force, operated the most advanced aircraft in the world, and emerged unscathed, leading her team to success in every engagement. Yet she remained grounded, aware that the journey was far from over. The sky held endless challenges, and every mission, simulation, and flight would test her skill anew. But for the first time, she understood the full scope of her potential. Maya was ready for any mission, any opponent, and any horizon. The flight home to Nebraska felt surreal. After months of grueling training, F-35 maneuvers, and red flag exercises, Maya looked down at the familiar patchwork of fields, rivers, and small towns from the cockpit. Her eyes traced the rows of corn swaying in the late summer breeze, the roads she had once driven countless times, and the tiny airstrip where her journey had begun. Everything had changed, yet everything felt the same. She had left a small-town pilot behind and returned as Viper, a name that now carried weight across the Air Force and beyond. Her arrival in her hometown was met with unexpected attention. Local newspapers and TV stations had caught wind of her exploits, and reporters flocked to capture the story of the girl from nowhere who had mastered the Air Force's most advanced fighter jets. Maya felt a mixture of pride and awkwardness. She had never sought fame, never imagined herself as a symbol of anything larger than her own personal goals. Yet here she was, a living testament to perseverance, skill, and determination. At the airport, a modest crowd of friends, family, and curious townspeople had gathered. Maya's parents stood front and center, faces alight with pride. Her father, who had spent decades teaching her the fundamentals of flight over the cornfields, hugged her tightly. "You've made us proud," he said, voice thick with emotion. Her mother, usually quiet and reserved, whispered, "You've shown them all what we always knew." Maya smiled, feeling the weight of her hometown's admiration, but also a quiet grounding in the people who had shaped her from the very beginning. Local media quickly highlighted her achievements. Headlines praised Viper as the cornfield pilot who conquered the F-35 and Nebraska's ace in the desk air. Reporters asked about her experiences, her call sign, and the challenges she had faced at Red Flag. Maya spoke candidly about training, discipline, and the importance of instinct. She emphasized teamwork, resilience, and the idea that any background, no matter how humble, could lead to extraordinary achievement. Her humility struck a chord with audiences. She wasn't boasting. She was demonstrating that dedication and courage mattered more than pedigree or privilege. The media attention brought new opportunities. Local schools invited her to speak to students about her journey, sharing lessons on discipline, perseverance, and following one's passion. Maya hesitated at first, unused to public speaking, but she soon discovered a deep satisfaction in inspiring others. In classrooms, she described long hours in simulators, the physical and mental demands of Red Flag, and the critical importance of preparation and instinct. She spoke not only about flying, but about facing fear, taking responsibility, and striving for excellence. Students listened, wide-eyed, captivated by someone who had transformed a childhood dream into reality. Beyond Nebraska, her story began to spread nationally. Aviation magazines, military publications, and even mainstream media highlighted the unlikely rise of a pilot whose origins were far removed from elite academies. Interviews emphasized her technical mastery, her leadership in high-pressure simulations, and the remarkable precision with which she commanded the F-35. Analysts noted her strategic insight and instinctive skill, framing Viper as an exemplar of what rigorous training and personal determination could achieve. For Maya, it was surreal to see her name and face on so many platforms. She had flown quietly for years, and now the world was paying attention. Despite the fame, Maya remained grounded. She spent mornings at the family farm, reconnecting with the roots of her journey. She helped her father inspect equipment, checked the airstrip, and even took a small plane up to review the land from above familiar territory that reminded her why she had started flying in the first place. These quiet moments kept her centered. While accolades and media attention were flattering, they were fleeting. The cornfields, the hours of solitary flight, and the lessons learned under pressure were permanent, shaping her both as a pilot and as a person. One day, Maya received an invitation to visit her former high school, where students crowded the gymnasium to hear her speak. She shared stories of early mornings, long flights, and the unexpected challenges of Air Force training. She described Red Flag in vivid detail, the split-second decisions, the coordination of multiple aircraft, and the mental clarity required to thrive under pressure. Students, many of whom had never considered aviation as a possibility, listened intently. Questions poured in about courage, failure, and determination. Maya answered honestly, emphasizing that mistakes were essential to growth, that persistence could overcome doubt, and that humble beginnings were no barrier to extraordinary achievement. Her story had a ripple effect. Local youth who had once seen pilots as distant icons now had someone they could relate to, someone who had flown above cornfields, worked tirelessly, and emerged among the elite. Flight clubs, STEM programs, and aviation initiatives began to highlight her journey, encouraging students to pursue careers in aerospace, engineering, and the military. Maya became a symbol not just of skill, but of possibility, a living example that determination, preparation, and courage could elevate anyone, regardless of their background. Despite the accolades and attention, Maya never lost sight of the next steps in her career. Red Flag had been a test, a proving ground, and a validation of her abilities. But the Air Force was vast, and missions were only getting more complex. The real world of aerial operations awaited missions that could involve real-time coordination with allied forces, advanced electronic warfare, and strategic deployment in sensitive zones. Maya knew that the media spotlight was temporary, that the sky held challenges far beyond publicity. She returned to training with renewed focus, ready to transform recognition into continued mastery. Her hometown visits also reinforced a sense of responsibility. Maya realized she had become a role model, not because she sought attention, but because her story demonstrated the power of resilience and commitment. She began mentoring young cadets, offering guidance on flight, study techniques, and handling stress under pressure. Her mentorship was practical and personal. She shared strategies she had learned through trial and error, anticipating errors, trusting instincts, and maintaining composure in high-stakes situations. For the cadets, guidance from someone who had truly been there was invaluable. As the summer waned, Maya returned to full Air Force duties with a heightened sense of purpose. Red Flag had solidified her skill and reputation, but her journey was far from over. She had earned the call sign Viper, commanded respect among peers and instructors, and inspired a new generation of aspiring pilots. Yet she also knew that mastery was a moving target. Every flight presented new variables, every mission demanded constant attention, and every engagement required a balance of instinct, skill, and judgment. Her work was never complete, but the foundation she had built was unshakable. Looking out over the Nebraska landscape one last time before returning to the base, Maya reflected on the path that had brought her here. From solitary flights over endless cornfields to mastering the Air Force's most advanced fighter jets, from initial ridicule to commanding respect, she had grown in ways she never imagined. The call sign Viper was no longer a novelty or a joke. It was a symbol of skill, persistence, and courage. And yet, she remained rooted in the lessons of her youth: humility, patience, and the quiet power of consistent effort. Maya's journey had become larger than herself. She had proven that even a girl from nowhere could achieve extraordinary feats with determination, skill, and courage. The media, her peers, and the next generation of pilots saw her as a trailblazer. But for Maya, the most meaningful validation remained personal. Every successful maneuver, every mission completed, every life touched by her mentorship reaffirmed why she had chosen this path. She had transformed doubt into triumph, skill into reputation, and a childhood dream into a legacy. And as she climbed back into her F-35 for her next training exercise, Maya felt the familiar surge of exhilaration. The cornfields had shaped her, Red Flag had tested her, and the sky had claimed her. The horizon stretched infinitely before her, filled with opportunity, challenge, and the promise of new missions. Viper was ready not just to fly, but to define what it meant to soar beyond expectations. The world was watching, but the sky remained hers. The orders came with the quiet hum of inevitability. Deployment. This was the stage every Air Force pilot dreamed of and dreaded in equal measure, the point where training, simulations, and practice collided with the realities of global conflict. Maya read the mission briefings carefully, noting every detail of operational zones, rules of engagement, and allied coordination. Her F-35 would no longer serve as a training tool. It would be an instrument of precision and defense, a machine capable of tipping the scales in real-world conflict. She felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, tempered by months of preparation and years of instinct, honed above cornfields and deserts alike. The base buzzed with activity. Pilots checked systems, briefings ran continuously, and crews prepared aircraft for long sorties that would test endurance, skill, and resolve. Maya's name, Viper, was already known among the deployment squadron, her reputation from Red Flag preceding her. Veteran pilots nodded in acknowledgement, recognizing the skill and composure that defined her. Even Jensen, now a colleague and ally, offered a restrained smile, a silent admission of respect. Maya felt a quiet satisfaction, but no arrogance. The stakes were higher than personal recognition. and every detail mattered. Her first real-world sortie was scheduled at dawn. The cockpit lights glowed softly as she ran final checks, reviewing radar sweeps, navigation channels, and communication protocols. Flight paths were optimized to avoid hostile anti-aircraft zones while maintaining readiness to intercept potential threats. The F-35 responded instantly to her touch, every control intuitive, every display a trusted partner in her awareness. Maya's heart raced, but her mind remained clear. She was no longer flying for herself or recognition. She was flying for mission success, team safety, and precision under pressure. The mission commenced as the sun began to crest the horizon. Maya's squadron lifted off in formation, engines roaring with controlled power. The first few miles were deceptively calm, the desert below shimmering in the early light. Then came the first contact, unidentified aircraft entering the operational zone. Communications channels erupted with reports of approaching threats. Maya's instincts kicked in. She assessed the enemy's speed, trajectory, and positioning, instantly plotting maneuvers for both engagement and defense. Her wingmen trusted her implicitly, executing her strategies without hesitation. Combat was unlike any simulation. Variables shifted in real time. Sudden changes in enemy tactics, environmental disturbances, and electronic interference challenged every assumption. Maya relied on everything she had learned, from crop-dusting instincts to red flag strategies, to maintain control and clarity. She dove, rolled, and banked in tight sequences, avoiding simulated missile locks while positioning herself advantageously. The F-35 responded as if an extension of her will, translating her split-second decisions into precise movement. By the end of the first engagement, her squadron had neutralized multiple threats and maintained perfect formation, drawing quiet commendation from commanders monitoring remotely. Despite the success, the sortie highlighted the intensity of real-world stakes. Fuel limits, mechanical wear, and environmental hazards imposed constraints simulations rarely replicated. Maya meticulously monitored every system, balancing aggression with caution. She guided her squadron through zones of potential engagement, anticipating enemy maneuvers and making decisive calls under immense pressure. For the first time, she truly understood the blend of strategy, skill, and instinct required for operational success. Every choice mattered. Lives depended on precision, judgment, and composure, the very qualities that had defined her journey from Nebraska to elite pilot. Over the next few weeks, deployments became a relentless rhythm. Maya participated in reconnaissance missions, interception drills, and coordinated operations with allied forces. Each flight pushed her to the edge of endurance, challenging both mind and body. G-forces tested physical limits, while rapid decision-making tested mental acuity. Fatigue accumulated, yet Maya's preparation and resilience allowed her to maintain peak performance. The nickname Viper took on new significance, not just a call sign, but a symbol of skill, reliability, and the ability to thrive when stakes were highest. Her squadron began to rely on her beyond piloting skills. Maya's insight into tactical positioning, risk assessment, and coordinated maneuvers elevated the performance of every pilot around her. Younger pilots sought guidance, while seasoned veterans respected her analytical and instinctive approach. The missions revealed her growth not just as a pilot, but as a leader, capable of influencing outcomes without needing formal authority. In combat, as in training, trust and competence became the foundation of success. Maya embodied both. One high-stakes operation became the defining moment of her deployment. Intelligence reported a coordinated enemy strike in a sensitive zone, requiring immediate intervention. Maya's squadron was tasked with interception and neutralization under strict engagement rules. As they approached the operational theater, enemy aircraft employed aggressive, unpredictable tactics. Many pilots hesitated or faltered, but Maya remained composed. She led the squadron through complex maneuvers, neutralizing threats while minimizing exposure. Each decision, each turn, each communication was executed flawlessly. By the time they returned to base, commanders described the mission as exemplary, a textbook demonstration of precision and leadership under fire. The psychological toll was immense. Long hours, high-stakes missions, and constant vigilance tested endurance like nothing before. Yet Maya's mental discipline, refined through years of solo flights and rigorous training, proved invaluable. She compartmentalized stress, focused on execution, and maintained clarity when others struggled. Her instincts guided decisions, but her preparation ensured those instincts were informed and reliable. This blend of skill, judgment, and experience defined her as a pilot capable of performing at the highest level in real-world combat. During downtime, Maya reflected on her journey. She remembered the endless cornfields where she first learned to fly, the early simulator sessions, the intensity of red flag, and the lessons learned from mentors and rivals alike. Each phase had contributed to her resilience, skill, and composure. She realized that every challenge from small town, ridicule to elite competition, had forged her into the pilot she had become. Her call sign, Viper, was not just a label. It was a reflection of every triumph, every lesson, and every instinct honed to perfection. Her deployment also highlighted the human dimension of warfare. Each mission involved coordination, trust, and communication. Lives depended on split-second decisions. Maya embraced the responsibility, understanding that leadership was as much about empathy and clarity as it was about skill. She supported fellow pilots, mentored younger cadets, and ensured her squadron maintained cohesion under pressure. Her effectiveness was measured not just by mission success, but by the trust and respect she inspired. In every sense, she had become a cornerstone of her unit. As the deployment drew to a close, Maya's accomplishments were quietly recognized at the highest levels. Her missions had been flawless, her leadership exemplary, and her instinctive skill unmatched. Awards and commendations were secondary to the knowledge that she had performed at the edge of human and technological capability. Yet even in recognition, Maya remained focused on the sky ahead. Every mission reinforced that mastery was an ongoing pursuit, that challenges would continue, and that the horizon was limitless. Returning to Nebraska after deployment brought a sense of closure and reflection. Maya landed at her hometown airstrip, greeted by familiar faces, friends, and family. The cornfield stretched beneath her, a comforting contrast to the high-stakes world of advanced aerial combat. She felt gratitude for her roots, knowing that the discipline, patience, and resilience learned in those fields had prepared her for the most challenging assignments of her life. The journey from cornfield pilot to elite Air Force combat pilot had come full circle. Maya's story became a legend Viper, the pilot who had turned humble beginnings into extraordinary achievement. Her journey inspired countless young pilots, demonstrating that skill, instinct, preparation, and courage could overcome any doubt. She had faced ridicule, rigorous training, and the pressures of high-stakes combat, emerging not just as a master of the F-35, but as a symbol of perseverance and excellence. Her legacy extended beyond medals or recognition. It lived in the pilots she inspired and the sky she commanded with unshakable skill. Looking out over the Nebraska horizon one final time, Maya felt the wind in her hair, the thrill of flight in her heart, and the satisfaction of a journey completed. She had earned her place among the elite, not by circumstance or privilege, but by relentless determination, exceptional skill, and the courage to trust herself when it mattered most. The sky was hers, the future limitless, and Viper had become more than a call sign. It was the embodiment of a dream realized, a challenge conquered, and a legacy secured.